Welcome back to Flashpoint. Joining us now, the one Republican to win on Tuesday, Charlotte City Councilman Tariq Bokhari. All right, Tariq, so you barely squeaked by on this. What is your takeaway from what was, admittedly, a narrow win?
Well, it was an incredibly narrow win. I walked into that night in my mind thinking I could lose even. So it wasn't some kind of shocker. My big takeaways really are threefold. One, we put in just this Herculean effort, and this Republican slate that I've been working with, that I handpicked for over a year, they did an amazing job. It sucked that they lost, but at the end of the day, we have a bench for the future with them. The second one, now back into my race specifically, is I think that the Democrats put up, quite frankly, the greatest candidate that they could have run against anyone in District 6. And she was not just legit and smart and a hard campaigner, but deeply connected into the Methodist faith community of District 6. So she came in with a constituency. They couldn't have even invented someone that perfect. And I think the world of her, and she did a lot herself there. Not to mention all of the Democrats were focused on one district from the mayor on down. It was the only thing they spent money and focused on. But then number three, and I think this can't go overlooked, and I think it's something I've been self-reflecting on a lot, is the role I've had to play for the last 3 years. Ben, you remember on our first term, 2 years, millennials high-fiving, cutting ribbons. Our biggest controversies were, should we live stream council meetings? Then we got elected in 2019, which is the last time I've been tested. And then essentially the month after, the pandemic starts, and that leads to the economic recovery efforts and the protests, to the riots, to throwing the police under the bus and abolishing single family zoning. The role I've had to play through that, whether I like it or not, has been the counter voice, and that hurt me with definitely Democrats and potentially some unaffiliateds that saw that, and hopefully I don't have to be that going forward.
Well, speaking of that, I want to talk about that, because you said to the Observer that you became public enemy number one. Do you view that as a badge of honor, or is this something you're going to have to work on, because you got to run again in a year if you want to win?
Well, I said a public enemy number one. Just to be clear, I don't think I'm like the number one public enemy of the world here, but part of me views it as a badge of honor in that I stood up and spoke for what I needed to, and people got mad at that. So I'll never, ever be ashamed of that. But a lot of me, you get caricatured in this world, and I am not, that's not who I am. Am I loud and excited and passionate about things? Do I go hard at stuff? Absolutely. But I'm not a bomb thrower, and people who really work with me know I'm 90% behind the scenes working. What you see just seems like a carnival barker, but that's kind of the last resort that I've reached. So it is something I'm deeply self-reflecting on. The Observer endorsement, when they say, he's, a little bit of this, it makes me introspective to say, that's not who I want to be. It's who I was forced to be. So I do hope I have an opportunity to play a different role this next term.
Before the new council is even sworn in on the 6th of September, you guys got to vote on the UDO. It was narrow already. Where do things stand? You ran on this. Where do things stand as we go to that vote a few weeks from now?
The two things I'd mention here are, I've kind of reserved my mind that I'm not giving any barn burner speeches for this. I have done everything I tried to do to make the outcome I thought was right happen. And that led all the way up to me sending tens of thousands of dollars of mail and communications to this community saying, this is your referendum. You have a chance to vote one person in on the slate, and then we can stop this. That didn't happen. So as much as I hate it, I'm going to view that as the community's voice has spoken here, and I'm going to vote no, but move on. But now there's some new drama rising up that I've been hearing about, where a certain council member has raised their hand that certain aspects around tree save and around hardscaping and the rules there, if that doesn't change, and it's against what a lot of the professional community has said that they would want to happen, and at this 11th hour, if that doesn't change, there'd be a no vote of one that was yes. And that narrow margin, I mean, if this doesn't pass on the 22nd, this does not pass in its form with single family zoning. So I'll be watching intently, obviously.
So I'm going to be watching that closely. What do you think that Dimple Ajmera should be the mayor pro tem. You all vote on this. Traditionally, it's the top vote getter, which would be Dimple, but there's no rules, I don't think, saying that it has to be. What's your take on this?
Yeah, first and foremost, myself and my other Republican colleague that make up the super minority, our opinion doesn't matter unless the Democrats don't agree. So let's say that first and foremost. If I think she should or shouldn't, doesn't matter. I personally don't think she should. I've worked with her and by her for 5 years. She has matured incredibly in how she's directly correlated herself with the voters and the public and the media. But behind the scenes, I know what it takes to be a good mayor pro tem, and I know how she operates and works behind the scenes. And for what we've gone through the last 3 years, I'm not exactly sure that's what the order of the day needs to be for that. But again, that's for the Democrats to decide.
You mentioned there's going to be two of you on council as far as Republicans go. You're going to have a year to get stuff done. How confident are you that you all, despite your super minority, as you said, can work with Democrats in this next year to get stuff done?
I go in hopeful but highly skeptical because, one, it's a short time frame. There's really a year before campaign starts, less than a year. So that's when the work has to be done. And if you look at what we know is on the horizon that will be controversial, it's the UDO, and that's happening theoretically before the new council's sworn in. But beyond that, there's nothing else real that we know of. The Transformational Mobility Network, it's in no imminent danger of being voted on or even discussed as a real option. So now we're looking at what I hope the case is, which is, let's get back to that first term in 2017 where it's just more standard municipal topics that aren't partisan, that aren't controversial, that we can do better in. And if we can do that and we aren't throwing any curveballs, like the protests and like the pandemic, and we don't create any of our own crises like we did with the UDO, we could be in an opportunity here where things are smoother and we're doing the work and everyone's calm down from a really brutal 3 years.
Quickly, one question. What do you think should be council's priority?
I think council's priority should, it's a really tough one because there's so many burning priorities. I think it has to be public safety though, because that's the one where you can get proactive things right all up and down your priority list. But if public safety is there and it's rotting a hole through the core of your city, you're in bad shape. So I think we would need to focus on police morale. We have measurements. We understand where it's at, and it's not where it needs to be. Homicides over 60 already, violent crimes, everything is not good. Homelessness right now, if you go to Woodlawn and South, there's a new encampment right there to shut down gas station. We can approach these things with empathy, but with resolve, but it's just going to take the will to do it. And I think that has to be our top priority.
All right, Tariq Bokhari, District 6 council member, going for his third term now, coming up in just a few weeks, starting in September. Tariq, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. Missed you, Larkin.
That's right. Larkin Eggleston, typically your compadre on these appearances. All right, Tariq, thanks. Appreciate it. More Flashpoint after this.